Hello, friends. Myself is Professor F.Y.B.Sc DG from Department of Botany. I will teach you Botany paper second, Morphology and Anatomy. Now, under this course, today we are going to start with the chapter number 5, Internal Organization of Primary Plant Body. Under this chapter, our first topic of discussion is the study of internal structure of dicotyledon stem, that is the young dicot stem. Young dicot stem means the stem which have not undergone the process of secondary growth. The typical example which we are going to visualize is sunflower. Now this study is just like the study as you have done it in 11 or 12 standard, the study of internal structure of cucurbita stem, where you have observed bicollateral type of the vascular bundles. The cucurbita is also dicot, but here we are going to visualize the typical example of dicot as sunflower. Now, this image shows two figures. The first figure is of ground plant, that is diagrammatic section of the sunflower stem. This is a transverse section of the sunflower stem. Transverse section means the stem have cut it at right angle to the growing axis. The stem have cut it at the right angle to the growing axis. This diagrammatic section shows us what is the internal organization of the different tissues or the different layers, how they are composed of. Now, this diagrammatic section or ground plant shows outermost skin. The outermost skin is called epidermis. This is the epidermis. The green colored is the epidermis. Now, this green colored epidermis means the skin of the stem, outermost protective covering of the stem. Now, this epidermis skin, just like our skin of the head, hand, it shows the hairs. It also have the epidermal hairs, or we can call them as the stem hairs. Now, below this epidermis, outermost skin, protective cover, coating, there is a hypodermis. Hypo means lower, below. Below the dermis, below the epidermis, there is hypodermis. Now, below the hypodermis, there is the third layer. It is called cortex. This blue color is the cortex region. This is a storage region of the stem. It stores the reserved substances in the parenchymatous cells composing the cortex. Now, the lowermost region of this cortex is called endodermis. This is the endodermis. In the figure, it is shown brown colored. This is the complete ring of the endodermis. Now, inside the endodermis, there is a ring of the vascular bundles. Suppose these are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These are the vascular bundles. The vascular bundles are arranged in the form of ring. Vascular bundles are arranged in the form of the ring. Now, we have to visualize what are the different tissues composing internally, how is their structure, how much is their thickness, and what functions they show. Now, to study this internal tissue organization, we can visualize the sector of the stem. Suppose this is the complete section. Of this complete section, we can visualize only the part of it. We can visualize only the part of it from the epidermis up to the center part, up to the core part of the stem. The core part of the stem is called pith. The core part of the stem is called as the pith. For example, this is the pith. This is the pith. And around the pith, the vascular bundles are arranged in the form of the ring. Vascular bundles are arranged in the form of the ring. And we have to visualize the vascular bundles of the sectors. For example, this much part can be elaborated or it can be magnified to view each region and the tissues composing internally the stem. Now, over here, this is the sector of the stem which is magnified from the ground plan or diagrammatic section of the diagrammatic section. This is the part which is magnified, showing all the cellular details present inside the young stem. Now, as we have discussed in the ground plan, the outermost covering is called epidermis. Outermost covering is called as the epidermis. Now, this is the epidermis. This green colored is the epidermis. Now, this epidermis is made up of single layer of the cells. The single layer of cells are composed, they are compactly arranged without intercellular spaces. This is the protective skin of the stem. Dermis means a skin or dermis means a layer. Our skin, just as it protects our body, the stem also have the skin or epidermis, epidermis. Epi means outermost. Outermost skin of the stem is called epidermis. Now, this protective epidermal layer or protective epidermal skin to perform the function of protection beautifully, this epidermis is deposited with the extra coating on it. The extra coating is called cuticle. The epidermis is deposited with the other certain substances which enhances the protective function of the epidermis. Now, this particular epidermis also shows extra measures to have the nice protection. For example, the epidermis have the epidermal hairs, just as our skin of the head, hand have the hairs. The hairs are meant for protection from the mechanical injuries. Just as our hairs, the stem also shows the epidermal hairs. Now, these hairs protect the plant body from the grazing and browsing animals. The hairs also are meant for the reflection of the light, which causes desiccation, burning. So, this is sort of protective function which the epidermal hairs they perform, and they are developed from the epidermal cells. So, this is all about epidermis, outermost covering, outermost layer, outermost protective skin of the plant stem. We call it as epidermis. Now, after the epidermis, there is a hypodermis. The second layer of the stem is called hypodermis. Hypo means below. Dermis means a layer below the epidermis. Hypodermis. Now, this hypodermis is made up of a characteristic type of tissue called cholenchyma. This is a cholenchyma tissue. Now, this cholenchyma is a very characteristic type of tissue. The intercellular spaces are filled up with certain filling substances. It is cutin. Now, this cholenchymatous hypodermis, this is a mechanical tissue present in the young stems. Now, this mechanical tissue have the characteristic property that it shows the flexibility or elastic strength. The young stems, when they rapidly grow, they should not be distracted. For this purpose, they contains the hypodermis in the form of cholenchyma tissue, where the bending of the stem is permitted because of the elasticity or flexibility of the cholenchyma tissue. Now, the total number of layers of the cholenchyma tissue, they may be 2 to 3 or 4. So, this is all cholenchyma tissue. The intercellular spaces are filled up with the filling substances. So, this is about hypodermis, a primary protective tissue composing the hypodermis. Now, below the hypodermis, there is a ground tissue called cortex. This cortex is made up of parenchyma tissue. Now, the outer part of the parenchyma tissue in the region of cortex contains photosynthetic pigments. For example, this is the region over here. The parenchyma cells, tissues contain photosynthetic pigments in it. Due to the presence of the photosynthetic pigments in the parenchyma tissue over here, this parenchyma is called chlorenchyma. Chlorenchyma means photosynthetic chlorophyll pigment bearing tissue is called chlorenchyma. Now, below the chlorenchymatous part of the cortex, there is a storage region of the cortex. For example, over here, this is a storage region of the cortex. This is made up of parenchyma tissue. This parenchyma is a major storage tissue. There are intercellular spaces. The parenchyma cells are thin-walled, and the major function of the parenchyma tissue is the storage of food substances, the food like starch. This is stored in the storage region. This is a massive region of the stem performing the function of the storage. Now, below the region of cortex, there is innermost layer of the cortex called endodermis. In the figure over here, the endodermis is seen in the form of a brown layer. For example, this is the endodermis. This is the endodermal layer. Innermost layer of the cortex is called endodermis. Now, inside the endodermis, as we have seen in the ground plan, there is a ring of the vascular bundles. This is one vascular bundle. This is the second vascular bundle. And just like these two vascular bundles are arranged in the form of total ring like this. Now, each vascular bundle, if we observe, it shows two major components. There is a water transporting component called xylem. This is the xylem part, made up of round tubes in it, just like the pipes, capillaries, just like the pipeline as it conducts the water. This xylem is also composed of micro capillaries, micro pipelines in the stem for transporting the water absorbed from the roots up to the apex of the plant body. So this is a water transporting tissue called xylem as a part of vascular bundle. Now, in addition to the xylem, the vascular bundle shows the phloem. For example, this blue color is the phloem. This phloem is a food transporting tissue. The food thus synthesized in the green part of the plant body lives by the process of photosynthesis. This prepared food is transported to the rest of the part of the plant body with the help of the phloem. So this is food translocating tissue. We call it as phloem. So these are the two major components of vascular bundles. One is called xylem, another is the phloem. And these xylem and phloem, as the part of vascular bundle, they are jointed in a single bundle. They are present in the single bundle. This is xylem, this is phloem. And due to occurrence of xylem and phloem in a single bundle, the vascular bundles are called conjoint. Such vascular bundles are called as the conjoint vascular bundles. And these vascular bundles thus they shows xylem. Above the xylem there is a phloem, one above the other. The xylem and phloem it is placed, and due to such an occurrence of xylem and phloem, just like the steps of the building, one above the other, the steps are there. The vascular bundles are collateral, one above the other. Above the xylem, the phloem is placed. This is called collateral. Now, beside this, the vascular bundles, they shows a meristematic tissue in between xylem and phloem. This yellow colored strip, this is the meristematic tissue. We called it as cambium. This cambium later on, with the maturity of the stem, it causes or it is responsible for to have the secondary growth in the stem. Now, to have the secondary growth in the stem, the sunflower stem later on increases in the girth due to this meristematic tissue. We call it as cambium. This is a rapidly dividing ability bearing tissue. We call it as meristematic tissue, cambium. Now, as the cambium is present between the xylem and phloem in the vascular bundle, such vascular bundles are called open type of vascular bundles. Vascular bundles are called as the open type of vascular bundles, as they shows a cambium over here, the vascular bundles are called open type of vascular bundles. So these are the three important words to describe the vascular bundles of sunflower, vascular bundles of the dicot stem. Vascular bundles are conjoint, xylem and phloem jointed together, and one above the other they are placed. The vascular bundles are called collateral. And the third word to describe the vascular bundles is the vascular bundles are open. Open means each vascular bundle is with the strip of the cambium, and such cambium bearing vascular bundles are called open type of vascular bundles. So conjoint, collateral and open type of vascular bundles are there in the sunflower. Now beside this, if you observe the shape of these vascular bundles, the shape is just like a wedge, just like a wedge, or the top line. There it is broad above and tapered at the lower side. This is called as wedge-like or top-shaped vascular bundles. Now, such wedge-like or top-shaped conjoint, collateral and open vascular bundles, they are arranged in the ring. As we have seen in the ground plan. The total number of vascular bundles are very numerous, and they are arranged in the form of circle. They are arranged in the form of concentric ring. So this is all about the vascular bundles, components of the vascular bundles, xylem and phloem, and there is a cambium between the xylem and phloem. Now, in addition to this, the vascular bundles are at the top. They shows a characteristic tissue we call it as pericycle. This is a pericycle. Now, this is a protective tissue at the top of each vascular bundle, just like the cap. As we wear the cap on the head, the vascular bundles are also with a cap of a protective tissue called pericycle. Now, this pericycle is made up of a characteristic tissue which is called sclerenchyma. The sclerenchyma tissue cells are just like hexagonal or pentagonal in the shape, or just like a benzene ring, or just like the houses of the honeybee comb. They are hexagonal or pentagonal in the outline, and they in the form of a patch, in the form of a cap above the top of the vascular bundles, they composes a characteristic mechanical tissue giving the strength to the vascular bundles. So this is about pericycle. This is about the pericycle, a mechanical tissue present just like a cap at the top of each vascular bundle. The sclerenchyma tissue is hexagonal or pentagonal in the outline. Now, in addition to the pericycle, between the vascular bundles, this is the parenchyma tissue over here. This is the parenchyma tissue over here. This is the parenchyma tissue over here. This is nothing but the primary medullary ray. This is nothing but the primary medullary ray. Now, in addition to the primary medullary ray, the core part or the central part of the stem, it shows this is the central part of the stem. This is called as pith. This is made up of parenchyma tissue. This is a soft, delicate, loosely placed storage parenchyma tissue composing the core part, the central part of the young stem, we call it as the pith. So this is how we have discussed from the periphery, from the outermost region epidermis, we have discussed up to the pith. So epidermis followed by hypodermis. Below the hypodermis, there is a region of cortex. This cortex, some part of it is photosynthetic. We call it as chlorine-chimatous part of the cortex. Below the chlorine-chimatous part, there is purely storage part of the cortex, made up of parenchyma, loosely placed, thin-walled, with numerous intercellular spaces. This is inner part of the cortex. Now, below the inner part, there is the endodermis, innermost layer of the cortex. Now, below the endodermis, there is a ring of vascular bundles. This is vascular bundle, this is second vascular bundle. These vascular bundles are arranged in the form of, ring. Over here, in this sector, this is a sector which we are visualizing. This sector shows only two vascular bundles. This is one and this is another. In fact, these are present in the form of ring as we seen in the ground plan. The vascular bundles, as we discussed, they are conjoined, collateral, and of open type, wedge-shaped or just like shape of the top, and they are arranged in the form of the ring. Or in a concentric circle. The core part of the stem is occupied by the soft, delicate tissue. We call it as the pith. This is the pith, and between the vascular bundles, there is a medullary ray. This is a part of the stem. Which help in translocation of the food. Medullary ray helps in the translocation of the food. So this is how the young sunflower stem, it is composed by different tissues in the form of different layers, starting from outer peripheral protective skin epidermis up to the core part of the stem. We call it as the leaf. This is the figure. This figure, it shows all the cellular details and also tells by labeling their names and what function they perform and from what cells, tissues it is made up of. So this is how we have studied over here the TS of dicotyledon stem, primary structure of the young stem of dicot. For example, this is the typical sunflower stem. Now we have to prepare this figure. For examination. The sector of the figure, elaborating from epidermis up to the pith, this should be prepared, this should be sketched, and it should be rightly labeled as we have labeled over here, as we have given the label epidermis, hypodermis, cortex, pericycle, phloem, cambium, xylem, pith over here. This is how the right labeling should be given to all the tissues, and the functions of different regions, functions of the different tissues composing each layer of the internal framework of the young stem should be prepared. Okay, this is all about the young dicot stem. If you have any doubts, you can ask me the questions. Okay, धन्यवाद.